Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. I'm working on getting my garden cleaned out for the winter, and I still have onions in the ground. So I thought I'd take this opportunity with these last few onions that I have here to just go over a few basics in case you're not sure when to harvest your onions or what to do with them after you've harvested them. So what you want to look for when you're harvesting your onions is that the onion stem has bent over and gone down on its own. You don't want to be bending your onion stems to try and hasten maturity. That won't help. That actually might promote them to actually start setting up other sprouts and shoots. It's not going to help them develop better. So just wait for that stem to bend over. I like to wait for it to get dried out and shriveled up a little bit here, so it's really loose and floppy, and then you know that the onion has taken a lot of energy from the stem, because it'll still continue to take energy from the stem. If you really need to get your onions out, maybe it's going to be really wet where you are or really cold and you just need to get them harvested, it's fine once the stem has gone over to harvest them at that point and then just hang them somewhere, and I'll show you that in a minute, to help them to continue taking that energy out of the stem and hardening off for good storage. You can pull them up before that, but then you want to be using them, within a month for sure, just because they won't be as hardened off and as mature, and they won't have reached their full size. The stage where the stem has fallen over on its own is a good sign that your onion is done growing and filling out, and it's just hardening off and getting ready for winter storage here. So I'm going to just pull these out of the ground, and then I'll show you where the rest are that I have and what I like to do with them to help them to kind of harden off and get ready for winter storage. Onions are a great crop because you can pop them into little spaces. So these were just tucked at the end of a bed that had a lot of squash and things in it. And they're nice bulbs, nice sized bulbs. If you don't plant your onions too deep, or you come along and you kind of clear out the soil around them, that will encourage them to grow wider. I didn't do that with any of my onions this year, but you can see I still got decent sized bulbs. And I just have a couple here. These are a Spanish onion candy hybrid. So I just have these 4. So I'll just pop these in my basket, and then I'll show you the rest that I've already harvested. I've just popped a few onions in my Coldframe as I've been pulling them up the last few days. So you can see the one there. That's another one of the Spanish candy hybrids there that's hanging on that rack, and that's how I would normally hang them to cure them. These I pulled up last night, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep them out here for several days, and I'll explain that in a minute. So I just left them in my basket here. So I'll pull these onions out and we'll have a look at them on my potting table. Okay, so here's the onions that I've been harvesting the last few days. This is the one that was hanging on the rack, and you can see how the stem has gotten brown and it's starting to dry up, and you can see how it had flopped over. I didn't push it over. This was planted fairly deep, but it's flopped over and it's really soft in the neck area here. So this was ready to harvest. I hung it upside down, and its stem was green like this when I did that. A little bit of browning and drying at the end, but much greener. And it started, this has been about 3 days now for this one. 2 days maybe? 2 days. And it's really started to lose its color and dry out. Whereas the ones in this basket I just picked last night, and they still have fairly green stems. Now normally, like I said, I would take them and I would hang them in my Coldframe upside down and let the stems just hang like that and give the energy up to the onions and let them harden off that way and get ready for storage that way. But we are forecast to get down to possibly negative temperatures tonight, and I'm just not sure that my Coldframe is going to keep them from freezing in there. and I don't want to risk that with a whole basket full of onions. It probably would be fine. Just throw a burlap sack or something over for the night, and I'm sure they would be fine, but I just don't want to take that risk when I don't have to. So what I'm going to do is take my onions, and I'm just going to put them in layers in my basket here. This basket will still allow for air circulation, which is the main thing that we want. But it'll be easy to move around, and so that's what I'm going to do with them for now. And then once we're past this cold night, I can come out and I can hang them if I want, because I think, unless they change the forecast, that's going to be our last really cold night for a few days, and then we'll be back up to a little bit warmer, just in the single digits Celsius for nighttime temperatures. So these, you can see, were small. These were, pretty young. You can tell here, like, the neck hadn't actually broken or fallen over yet. And this one was just barely starting to. But I wanted to get my onions out of that bed, so I decided to take them out, and I'll just make sure to use these first. In fact, I'm not even going to put them in this basket to store, because I'll just take these straight to the kitchen and use them right away. Same with this one here. And you can also see that some of my white onions, these are Superstar White, they got massive last year, but they were planted a little bit deep this year. They originally were planted fine, but with the super dry summer that we had, I put a lot of mulch on that bed, because these were in with my tomatoes, and so they wound up getting buried under that mulch. These are red onion. And again, like, a lot of my onions wound up getting buried under mulch. And so they just didn't grow very large, but they're still onions. And these are actually a nice size for using for me in my kitchen. While I'm doing this, I'm going to be looking and making sure that there's no damage or rot or anything on my onions. Just like I would if I was hanging them, because you don't want to have that infecting the rest. Because it was such a dry year, I don't expect to see any of that, but if we'd had a very wet year, then you might see some onions with some rotten or soft spots on them. Or if you've had like an onion maggot or something, I think root maggots, you would have problems with that as well. So you can see how these stems had naturally started to fall over, but they weren't as brown and finished as the others. And it could be days to maturity as to why some were more brown than others. I'm not sure what the difference is between the two varieties. I know I have about a 20 or 30 day difference between some of my varieties, and they were all put out about the same time. So this is another great way if you don't have racks to store your onions on. Something like this where they're still going to be getting airflow is just as fine. They don't need to be upside down to store them to harden off. And then once they've all dried up and the stems are really soft, and some people say once they rattle in their skins, which should be like these that I harvested today, pretty much almost that point, where it's kind of getting loose and rattly around there, because the main bulb of the onion will dry up just slightly, and then the outer skin will be kind of papery and rattly. Then you can take them and just store them in a cool but not freezing area with air circulation, like just leaving them in this basket like this would be fine. Just go through them once in a while, make sure you don't have, again, anything that's causing rot for some reason. Or you can braid the stems together and hang them. So I usually just set the basket out in my heated attached garage. It's we just keep it just above freezing usually, so it's a good spot for them. And when I do that, I'll take off the roots and I take off the stems because I just store them in a basket. Actually, I store them in this basket because there's lots of air circulation. So that works well for me. So that's really all there is to harvesting your onions and getting them ready for storage. But I think it explains what you need to do to store them. Is just once they've dried and hardened off for, about a week, just trim off the ends. You don't want to wash them or anything. Just trim off the roots and the greens and put them somewhere with good air circulation that's going to be a little bit cooler than your regular house temperature, but not freezing. And they should store through the winter for you. I had mine stored right up until the spring, and most of them were still looking really good. A few had sprouted. And it'll depend on the variety a little bit and how mature they were, whether they sprout on you or not over the winter. But they usually will do pretty well. Now, I did a little experiment with I had a few smaller onions like this that had wound up getting stored. They'd fallen to the bottom of the basket and I hadn't pulled them out right away, and I'd forgotten about them. So they were starting to sprout this spring. And onions are biennial, which means they form their bulb, their main root and their leaves the first year, and then the second year they set seed. So I experimented with those more mature onion bulbs that were just the small ones there that were already sprouting, and I planted them in a raised bed, and I wanted to see if maybe I could get some seed off of them. So I think they maybe have mature seed on them now. So I brought out a paper bag. I need to grab some with snips, and then we'll go and cut those seed heads off and see if we can get some stored to plant for next year. So I thought I'd bring you along for that. So here I am over at one of my fabric raised beds that I set up for this year. And this is where I planted my onion sets that I was pretty sure would go to seed this year. And you can see that they've formed flowers, and hopefully you can see in there they have the little black seeds coming out. So I'm just looking to see if I have it marked what I planted here. Oh, I can see I had a red onion here. This wasn't set for seed because this was the first year I grew these, but the neck had bent over on its own and it was sitting here. I forgot I'd planted those there. So I will take this and harvest it. And then I had some of the candy yellow, and this one I can see didn't set seed but has a really nice bulb on it. So again, I'll just take these that didn't set seed, harvest them. Here's a Superstar White. So those will just be put into my harvest basket. They're a lot wetter than the others, so I'll make sure that they're on the top and not getting the rest wet, or else we could wind up with rot. This bed still has a lot of drip going to it for some things that are growing. But what I want to do with the ones that have started to set seed, and not all of the seed pods look mature, but some are, and I just have my paper bag here, and a seed already fell out. I'm just going to cut the seed head into the bag. Now I think, I have them separated into the candy yellow and the Superstar White in rows here, but I think I'm just going to put them all into one bag because I plant my onions the same, I treat them the same, and when I go to harvest them, I'll know what's what, and I really don't know if they will have cross-pollinated anyway, so I probably won't be getting these exact varieties anyways. It's just kind of an experiment. I've never done this before. And now I'm sure I can probably still pull up these onions. Like this one actually split. It's off of one bulb that's split into two. It's sharing a root system by the looks of things. It was definitely a split. They weren't just close together. The root system was connected. So these I'll take, and I'm sure this will be fine to use, but they have a hard neck on them, a hard stem. So these will be ones I'll use right away. I'm going to be making a batch of salsa in the next couple days, and so I'll probably put these into that because I think I don't know how well they'll store being second year onions, and that the necks got hard instead of flopping because they had that seed stalk in them. I'm not sure this one has any seeds in it. I'll put it in there. You see the black seeds in here. So that's where the flower's been pollinated and they're popping open and the seeds are ready. So I'll just leave these in here to dry out for a week or so, and then I'll give them a good shake, and then the seeds should have fallen out, and I can just take the umbel or the flower head out, and any major pieces of chaff or extra bits that aren't seeds. And then I should be left with just mostly seeds in the bag. So a few more hanging this way. Again, some of them look like maybe they weren't pollinated or aren't quite mature, but I'm going to take them all now and we'll see. I'm sure this will be more seeds than I need anyways. There, I think I got all the seed heads. And I'm just going to pull up the rest of these onions, and you can see, you know, how they just have a different kind of stature to them. They're trying to split. They're hard stalks, but I do think they should be fine. I'll try some before I go putting them in a whole batch of salsa, but I think they'll be fine still for eating like this. Kohlrabi leaf. Yeah, they all seem like they split. So, and I don't know, I've never saved onions for seeds for second year like that, so maybe that's normal to have them split. Oh, there's a slug. To have them split like that. Some green onions. So I do have some grass. But I do have some perennial onions that I've tried putting in this bed, and we'll see how they go. They're, let's see, there's a tag here. They're called Evergreen Hardy. And I was just experimenting with growing some perennial green onions here in this bed to see how they'll do for the coming years. They grew really nice. They were quite nice to cut the tops off of and enjoy that way. So I've never grown perennial onions before, so we'll see what that's like for me. If you have comments about growing perennial green onions, leave them in the comments. I keep thinking there's grass in there, but it's little tiny onions. So I'm going to take these over to my bench. So here's my onions from this year's harvest. I have harvested a few throughout the summer as I've needed them, but this is the bulk of them. I didn't grow as many, I don't think, this year as I have last year. I had quite a few left over and I was giving them away. But I'm really happy with this harvest. For the dry year we had, and like I said, me just covering all the onions up so heavily with mulch just to try and save the other plants they were interspersed with, I think these are pretty decent onions. I'll have a few that I need to use up kind of right away. I have some seed for next year, which is awesome. Hopefully that works out for me. And then I have the ones that I collected or I planted for seed. So I have some that didn't produce seed, you know, and they were planted just like you'd plant sets. So I'm not sure what the difference is between the ones that did set seed And the ones that didn't, maybe it was just how far mature they were at that set point. But the ones that didn't set seed naturally bent their stem over, the neck over, and they're nice and soft and small, just like the others that I harvested earlier. So I'm going to leave these in. They're already starting to dry out a little bit, even though that bed was quite wet. So I think just setting them on top here will be okay. This little green onion I pulled up by mistake. See if I have any more that, yeah, here's another one that just the stem dropped over. It didn't set seed. So I'll just set it in with these. And one more, a red one. This red one I had just planted. I forgot I had those in there, so it's a nice surprise. And then I have these onions, which did set seed, and you can see the difference is the stem is a lot harder, didn't get soft, it stayed upright, and many of them started to split. This one is even producing like 4 onions off of it. So I'm sure these will all be fine to eat still, that produce the seed, but they won't store as well, I don't think, with their stem like this. So I'm gonna actually just cut their stems off right now, put these straight into my kitchen. I'll even peel back some of the dirtier layers, put them in my kitchen, and I'll be using these in the next few weeks here, because I really don't think they're going to store for me. So hopefully you found that interesting and helpful to see how I harvest my onions, when I harvest them, and how I store them, and a little bit about how I'm trying to save seed and make my onions a little more self-sustainable. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, and if you think there's someone that could benefit from this content, feel free to share it with them. That really helps my channel out a lot. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.